I am the stone that the builder refused. I am the visual, the inspiration that made ladies sing the blues. I'm the spark that makes your idea bright. The same spark that lights the dark so that you can know your left from your right. I am the ballad in your box, the bullet in the gun, the inner glow that let you know to call your brother son. The story that just begun, the promise of what's to come. And I'ma remain a soldier till the war is won. Chop, chop, chop. You gon' flip. Chop, chop, chop. You gon' flip. Chop, chop, chop. You gon' flip. Chop, chop, chop.
So welcome to the Immaculate Negro, episode 8. As you can tell from this episode, we're going to be talking about poverty today. And this is something that I actually feel deeply in my soul because I believe it is an utter failure of mankind. Because poverty is a social construct that we have created for one another. And so as I watch people suffer in poverty, I can't help but think about how history has brought us to this point where there is such extreme poverty, where most of us are in poverty or different levels of poverty. And for the few people who don't know, defined by Webster, poverty is not having enough material possessions or income for a person's needs. Poverty may include social, economic, and political elements. Now, there is absolute or extreme poverty, which is the complete lack of the means necessary to meet basic personal needs, such as food, clothing, and shelter. Now, to me, poverty is simply a disparity of life. It is the difference between the first, second, and third world countries. It is a sign that as a society, as a people, as humanity, we have failed one another. So there are about 7.6 billion people in this world right now. And 600 million of them live in extreme or absolute poverty. So that's about 8% of the entire world, which doesn't seem like a lot till you remember it's 600 million people, right? So the extreme or absolute poverty line is different depending on where you live. For that line, for most people, it is living on less than $1.90 a day. In more developed countries, it's living on less than $3.20 a day, or living on less than $5.50 a day. Now, most of the world's population of poverty is in South America, Sub-Saharan Africa, India, and the Philippines. Now, just because it's a stronger congregation there doesn't mean it's not everywhere, obviously. In your city, in my city, there is homelessness, there is poverty. We see it every day. We see people who have to survive on the streets every day while we go spend $10, $20, $50 on some nonsense we don't really need, right? This is the gap in people's lives. It's visibly apparent in your day-to-day life. And the last thing that I guess I want to touch on, or that I found interesting about the idea of poverty, is this idea of multi-dimensional poverty. Now, multi-dimensional poverty acknowledges that poverty isn't always about income. Sometimes a person's income might be above the poverty line, but their family has no electricity, no access to a proper toilet, no clean drinking water, and no one in the family has completed 6 years of school. Multi-dimensional poverty looks beyond income to measure a person's healthcare, education, and living standards to determine their poverty levels. Now, this idea of multi-dimensional poverty was developed in 2010 by the United Nations Development Program and the Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative. Now, within the categories of health, education, and living standards, there are 10 key indicators of multidimensional poverty: nutrition, child mortality, years of schooling, school attendance, cooking fuel, sanitation, drinking water, electricity, housing, and assets. Now, deprivation of 3 or more of these things indicate that you are multidimensionally poor. 1.3 billion people in 104 developing countries can be classified as living in multidimensional poverty. Now, out of the 7.6 billion people in the world, 3.4 billion of those people are in poverty and struggle to meet their basic needs. Now, I would like to reiterate that I do believe poverty is just one of the many ways we have failed each other as a people. Now, I do believe personal responsibility is always a factor, and I will never deny that. But so is the condition with which you were born into, the society you reside in, and the people you have around you. But in its totality, poverty is the result of the unequal distribution of wealth and resources. The top 1% own 50.1% of the world's wealth. The total wealth in the world is valued at 280 trillion to date. So that means about 76 million people own about 150 trillion worth of the wealth, leaving the remaining 7.2 billion people to fight over the remaining $130 trillion of wealth. As you can see, there is a daunting gap in the distribution of wealth in today's society. Now, there is one last thing I want to touch on, or I want to mention. Another theory of the United Nations. The United Nations estimates that ending extreme poverty would cost between $60 and $175 billion. That is it. Between $60 and $175 billion. And that right there is the crux of what bothers me. Because it's not that it's not possible. It's not that we can't do it. It's not that we don't have the money. It's that as a whole, we simply do not care enough. Thank you. God bless.